Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Jamie and I'm so excited that you're here with me today. Today is going to be a shorter video, well, I think, but I think God just wants me to share kind of what I've been reading and the things that I've been learning from it. And so recently I've been reading just through 1st and 2nd Samuel. Basically it talks about Saul's reign and then how he was chasing David and then David's reign. Kind of just a very general feel for what's happening. And Samuel is the prophet when Saul was alive. And so today I wanted to talk specifically about 2 Samuel chapter 11, which is when David commits his great sin by sleeping with Bathsheba and then killing her husband. And it was crazy because as I was reading like 1 Samuel and like up until this point, I was like, David, like you're doing so good. I like almost didn't want to read chapter 11 because I was like, ugh, like I know what happens and I don't really want to go through it. But it's like, isn't that crazy? Like, I feel like sometimes we have these, at least for me, I'm like, oh man, like David was such a great king and like, you know, all of this, like Paul was amazing. And it's just like, they are amazing and like David is after God's own heart, but I forget sometimes like, oh, they're human just like me. And so it's like they're not perfect and I'm not perfect, and God doesn't expect me to be perfect because he knows my weaknesses and he knows my shortcomings. And so I don't know, part of me is just like, oh, I guess like, okay, like I'm actually not too far off from the people that are in the Bible, right? And like David, he like, I'm reading through 2 Samuel and he conquered like thousands of people, like 22,000. I'm like, all in one battle? Like, how is that even possible? But I mean, God was with him wherever he went. And so I guess I just want to talk about how like, you know, like even though you might feel like you're a sinner or you did like really bad things in your life, like God still has great plans for you. Like Paul, right? Who was called Saul. He was persecuting Christians and he was literally killing people in God's name. And God redeemed that and he turned him into like the most prolific writer of the New Testament, and he wrote so much of the New Testament, and like some of his teachings are just so vital to like how we understand Christianity today. And David, right, like from David's family line, like one of his descendants was Jesus. And so it's like God can redeem anything. He can turn everything around. And like just because, you know, we're human and we were born of the sinful flesh, that doesn't mean that like God doesn't have good things for us or that God doesn't want to use us in really big ways. Anyways, that wasn't even what I was supposed to be talking about or what I wanted to talk about today, but that just came up in my radar. But what I wanted to talk about was chapter 11. So let me just read verse 1 to 5. Okay. Then it happened in the spring, at the time when the kings go out to battle, that David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all the fighting men of Israel, and they destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah. But David remained in Jerusalem. So let me just stop there and talk about how, like in the beginning, right? It even talks about at the time when the kings go out to battle. Like that's what David was supposed to do. He was a king and he was supposed to go out in battle in the springtime. But because he didn't, he ends up staying in Jerusalem, which is how his sin with Bathsheba happened. Is first of all, he was somewhere that he wasn't supposed to be, and he wasn't following kind of like God's lead for him and what God wanted him to do in his life. Okay, verse 2. One evening, David got up from his couch and was walking on the flat roof of the king's palace. And from there he saw a woman bathing, and she was very beautiful in appearance. So, and then let's stop there, right? So, because David was where he wasn't supposed to be, that's kind of how it opened up like the gate, the opportunity for the enemy, for sin to come into your life. Like if you ever feel like God tells you, if you ever feel like you're tempted, let's say by like, I don't know, it's like sexual temptation, right? Like it's very easy if you set yourself and put yourself in an environment that you're not supposed to be. It's very easy for you to sin in that sense. So it's like if you're always, I don't know, like in an environment where, I don't know, you're hanging around people who are addicted to porn, who like lust after people, or just have a lot of sexual sin in their life. If you hang around them, and you make them like part of your inner circle and you start to learn from them, like I feel like that sets up an environment where sin can easily come in. And I feel like in this circumstance, right, like David was in an environment where sin could come because he was disobeying the Lord. I mean, it doesn't say here that he was supposed to go, like that the Lord told him to go out to battle, but it does say here he didn't do what the kings usually do in the springtime, which is go out to battle. So then, verse 2 says, from there he saw a woman bathing, and she was very beautiful in appearance. And this was something that like my boyfriend also brought up too, like your eye gates. So like what you see, right? Like what you see, what you watch, what you read, it impacts you. It influences the way you think, and therefore it influences your actions and your behaviors, and then your habits and your character. And just like how, in the Garden of Eden, like the devil tempted Eve to look at the apple. Like she looked at it. She saw that it was good. So it's like your eyes are just such like a open portal to like the rest of your body. Like in the Bible also talks about how like the eye is like the lamp of the body, right? Like if it is dark, if that part of your eye is dark, if that part of your body is dark, then like how much darker is the rest of your body gonna be? And so it's like that's why you always have to be making sure that you're reading things, you're looking at things, you're listening to things, or listening would be your ear gates, but you're looking at things, you're reading things that are good for you, that are like good for your mind. And so here, right, like what led to his temptation was he looked at the woman. He looked at Bathsheba bathing. And I don't know about you, but sometimes like if I don't know, like when growing up, I've definitely seen people like, I mean, actually, I don't even have a story, but it's like when you're watching a movie and like a super explicit scene comes up, right? Like, you know what's going on. And so then it's like, you're like, okay, let me like look away, right? Because you can immediately recognize that like, they're naked or whatever they're doing. And like also to say, definitely ask God what movies you should watch, because some of them like are really explicit and they're not good for you. But David, instead of immediately recognizing what was happening, he like didn't look away. He kept looking at the woman, and then kind of like seeing her, and like this is me imagining kind of what was going through his mind, but it's like once he saw her, then he started playing with the thoughts of like, oh man, like what if she and I were to be together, like she's beautiful. And so it's like all of these thoughts that run through your mind, these what ifs, like that, like is the birth of sin, and it leads to death. And so it's like as you dwell on those things that are not of God, it slowly does something to you where your body is just more susceptible to sin, because you're like, oh well, I've thought about it and it's okay, and so let me just act out on my thoughts. And so then verse 3 excuse me, David sent word and inquired about the women. Someone said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? David sent messengers and took her. When she came to him, he lay with her, and when she was purified from her uncleanness, she returned to her house. The woman conceived, and she sent word and told David, I am pregnant. Dun, 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 dun. Oh my gosh, this is just like, it's kind of steamy. It's kind of like, wow, that's a lot of drama. But like, someone, it's so funny. Well, it's not, I guess it's not funny, but it's so interesting in verse 3. It says, someone said, is this not Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite? So David knew what he was doing. Like someone, if he didn't know, okay, that's fine. I mean, I don't know. God doesn't want us to have more than like one husband, one wife, but that's what they did back then. And doesn't make it okay. But like, this was someone's wife. Like, this was Uriah's wife. But basically, he ignored that, the warning, and he sent messengers to, like, take her to be with him. And it's so interesting that it says, when she was purified from her uncleanness, like, they knew that it was unclean what they had done. And I don't know if they have to clean themselves after sex, like even if it's with their husband, but here it says she had to purify herself. So what they knew that what they did wasn't right. Yeah, and then the consequence is the woman conceived and she sent word and told David, I am pregnant. And so it's just like interesting how, like oftentimes when you are tempted to sin and you actually fall into sin, you don't think about the consequences. Like, I don't think David was thinking about making Bathsheba pregnant. Like, I think he just saw what was good in the moment and what felt good and what was desirable, and he just did it. And it's like, in previous times, like when he was going into battle, he would always, like the Bible would always say, David inquired of the Lord, like, should I go to battle? But here, David didn't inquire of the Lord. David just... Hey guys, I'm so sorry. The last video cut off, so I'm just going to finish up here. So we were talking about inquiring of the Lord. Whenever you do anything important, or really when you do anything at all, I think it's just important to inquire of the Lord because he knows everything. He knows what the consequences are to all of your actions, whether good or bad. And I think we can really learn from David because he should have inquired from the Lord. And like, I'm sure the Lord would have been like, no, definitely do not sleep with Bathsheba. But I mean, he learned. He fell on his face and like fasted and prayed to the Lord. And so David was also a very repentant man. And I think these 5 verses really show us, like he was just as human as we are. And I think in times when we are tempted to sin or when we do sin, it's important to remember God will always redeem us, just like how God redeemed David out of, like, even though David's first son with Bathsheba died, the son that he had afterwards was Solomon. And in the Bible it says God loved Solomon and he gave him so much wisdom and he gave him wealth on top of everything. And still from his family line came Jesus. And so I think from this story we can also learn, like, no matter how big our sin is, God always has a redemption plan. It might not look like it, it might not feel like it. You might think like, wow, like how is God ever gonna redeem this? But you just wait. He has such good plans for you, no matter how much you feel like you messed up, because he is always there with you and he's always writing your story in a way that grows you and glorifies him. And so I just wanted to end with that, and I encourage you guys to really dig deep into the Bible, especially into the Old Testament, and really just learn, like literally verse by verse, like how does this apply to me? What can I learn from this? And what could I have done? Like how can I inquire of the Lord in all of the decisions that I make? So thanks so much for watching, for finishing this video, for those of you who are patient. I hope God blesses you just in your everyday life, and that that he continues to reveal his word to you as you spend more time with him. All right, I think that is all. Well, thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.